Nigeria has committed to pay the full capital arrears of $28.7 million in Shelter Afrique in 4 installments starting this month, January of 2022. In September 2020, the housing-focused Pan-African finance institution received $9.4 million from Nigeria. The contribution moved Nigeria to become the second largest shareholder in the organization, with 13.2% of the shareholding behind Kenya with 17.78% and ahead of the African Development Bank at 12.83%. And joining us to discuss the scaling of affordable housing across Africa is the Group Managing Director of Shelter Afrique, Mr. Andrew Chimphondah. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to ask you, and Happy New Year as well.
Thank you so much. I look at you.
Yes, the importance, how important is the shareholder capital from the member nations of Shelter Afrique?
Oh, thank you, Rutus, and thank you for having us as Shelter Afrique. Well, shareholder equity contribution, that is the backbone of the company. And why do I say that? It's because it is the shareholders' contribution that measures their commitment to the company. It measures their confidence in the board of the company and, of course, in the management. And what I can say is that beyond just the confidence level, we as Shelter Afrique have been operating for over 40 years. But in the last 4 years, we've been able to get at least about $100 million from our shareholders during the time, as you can testify, with COVID, etc., all those difficulties. Because those countries not only realize the importance of housing, is because those countries also want to join Shelter Afrique to be able to support their housing programs. And it's through that support that we've received that we've been able to pay all our developmental financial institution lenders all the debt which we should have paid them over a period of 4 years, but we paid them 3 years in advance.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about from Europe, European Investment Bank. I'm talking about from France, AFD, from Germany, KfW, from West Africa, BOAD. Then also you've got the likes of KfW. You've also got the likes of African Development Bank that we've paid up. And then 2 commercial banks being the Ghana Housing International Bank, and then also, of course, the other one is NCBA from Kenya. Yes.
Okay, excellent stuff. Now, with all these, housing, different housing programs for each of these countries, each of the shareholders, does the strategy of behind implementing affordable housing across Africa, does it differ with each of the territories?
Yes. Well, you see, the thing is, the issue of a housing crisis cuts across all countries. All countries are struggling with housing. As Shelter Afrique, we have a center of excellence that estimates the shortage of housing at about 56 million units and growing. If we bring it closer home to Nigeria, you're looking at about 17 million. I know the figure is debatable.
Right.
You go to Ghana, about 1.7 million units. You go to Kenya, about 2 million units. You go to countries like Tanzania, it's about 3 million, South Sudan, 4 million. So the crisis is the same in terms of housing. The strategies are different because each country is at different levels of development. So if you look at Nigeria, it's got deep capital markets. It's got a very well-developed financial system. Of course, thanks to, all the efforts being done by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Dr.
Zainab Ahmed.
Exactly. Yep. So what I'm trying to say is that when you come to places like Nigeria, our intervention must be how do we encourage mortgage lending, because the mortgage penetration in Nigeria is about 0.5% to GDP. Yeah. In South Africa, 16%. Wow. Then in countries overseas, in the Western world, it's about above 80%. So how do we do it? We support institutions like Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company. Go to East Africa, also relatively well-developed financial systems. So how do we intervene as Shelter Afrique? We were part and parcel of the formation of the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company. Why is that important? It's because through the mortgage refinance companies, the commercial banks now get encouraged to now lend down the income bands. They now get to be encouraged to provide, home loans to people that are buying low-cost houses, etc. If you go to countries ravaged by the war, like the Central African Republic,
Yep.
there you have to build these institutions. You have to form the housing banks, like the primary mortgage lenders. You have to actually create possibly a different type of product than a mortgage, like incremental home loans, because of the nature of the country. If you go to a country where I come from, Zimbabwe, where there's liquidity problems, we have to provide liquidity by giving lines of credit to banking institutions there, so that those banks can now take that money, provide mortgages to the beneficiaries, but beyond that also provide developers with project finance, so that they can create the units which the building societies and primary mortgage lenders can also then be able to lend to people for home ownership. So different strokes for different folks. In essence here, we at Shelter Afrique, we have a center of excellence, and we have a team that looks at different strategy for each country. However, we cannot just as Shelter Afrique understand everything happening in all these countries, because we are 45, we operate in 45 countries.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. So what we do is we form collaborations, smart partnerships with the banks in those countries, so that, our preference is to provide lines of credit to those banks in those countries, so that because they understand the customers more, they've got more history, then they can now take that money and then lend it out because they understand the market. When we come to Nigeria, we form partnerships with the likes of the Family Homes Fund. Okay. We also form partnerships with the Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, REDAN, and we're very close to the Ministry of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, and of course we are very, very close and very well supported by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Shamsuna Ahmed, Dr. Ahmed, yes.
Fantastic. Now, does size come into play here? If I could make a comparison, a Nigeria versus a Namibia, for instance. Okay. Is your task, I guess, for the affordable housing scaling, is it easier if the country is smaller? So or is it more complicated than that?
Well, it's interesting. You take Nigeria, 200 million in population. You take Namibia, 2.5 million. Right. So Namibia is 2.5% or 2.5% of the population of Nigeria. Right. But if you look at land mass, Nigeria with all its states has got a comparable land mass, the same as Namibia. Right. But Namibia, half of that land is all desert. Right. You see. So let's bring it then back home. You look at the support that's provided by each country. So if you look at Namibia, the shortage of housing is 500,000 for 2.5 million people. You see the comparison. Yeah. Whereas in Nigeria, the shortage of housing is 17 million compared to a population of 200 million. Right. So can you see then that Nigeria has got a bigger problem? Right. If you actually take the shortages as a percentage of, let's call it the populations. So what is important now is what levels of support are being provided. So if you go to Namibia, because of course the size, etc., and what have you, the people that are given support for housing, mostly the civil servants, if they are buying a house, affordability there is a house of, let's say, $48,000 and below. The government actually subsidized that installment by paying 2/3 for the civil servant, and he pays only 1/3. So they enhance the affordability. Right. That's where they provide the support. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Whereas then when we come to Nigeria with the institutions that have been formed through the National Development Plan to deliver 500,000 units, the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan to deliver 300,000 units. They formed institutions like Family Homes Fund. You have the Federal Mortgage Bank. Yep. You have big institutions with big targets. Can you see their target is about, let's say, 500,000 through the development plan in a year. Right. Whereas that is the total cumulative. For
Namibia.
For Namibia. Yeah. So I think in the end, what we are saying is that you can raise bonds in Nigeria, but perhaps in Namibia, perhaps you can't. So it's different strokes. But I do think when you have more people, you have more to think about, because you are touching on more individuals. You see, the impact of government policy is felt a lot more, etc. And what have you. So yes, both have shortages, but both have different macroeconomic, let's call it dependencies. Gotcha. Compared to others as well.
You mentioned the bond. I believe in Nigeria, it's a 250 billion naira bond, I believe.
Yes,
I guess, and since you're here, so what does bring you besides the bond? What brings you to Nigeria?
well, what brings me to Nigeria? Look, I like the food.
Yeah, the food. Hey,
that's if I can just be honest, that's
right?
the main thing. Yes.
Top class. Everybody talks about Nigerian food. Yeah,
yes, the fufu and etc. and the jollof rice. But beyond that, because that's not so much, good for my weight. But beyond that, the most important thing is that we have been in Nigeria for more than 40 years, but we've started operating maybe more than 20 years, about 23 years. We have approved loans to Nigerian counterparties of above $191 million for 53 projects. But guess what? You approve $190 million, but you only pay out $88 million, less than 50% of that, to 23 projects. We actually have a project in our state called Shelter Afrique state. So what is the problem? You see, with our border-proof strategy, which means we need to understand and have a customer-centric approach, we realize that our biggest problem is we are collecting those US dollars you mentioned initially from all our countries. It gets into a pool. And now we are lending in United States dollars. But the big problem is, why has more than 50% of our money we've approved for projects in Nigeria not been taken up? It's because of the foreign exchange risk.
Right.
So these counterparties, be they banks or tier one developers or members of REDAN, their problem is when they get these, let's call it United States dollars, or let's call it hard currency, they are lending in Naira. Now, when there's a devaluation, which we've experienced in the Naira, it becomes difficult for them to pay the loans.
Right.
Some will say, okay, we'll go get cover. We'll try to hedge the foreign exchange risk. But the cost of hedging becomes too much, such that the end product becomes uncompetitive, and you can't even do business that way. So we are in Nigeria because for the very first time, we've listened to the market. We want to provide a Naira bond so that we can also lend in Naira.
Right.
This is going to give the opportunity for us as Shelter Afrique to support the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan to deliver 300,000 units by playing our part by bringing in 250 billion Naira. So what are we doing? We're actually now utilizing what is called debt capital. We are now taking monies from pension funds, insurance institutions and big institutions, and directing that to low-cost affordable housing. Where we are unique is we want to drive low cost. We want, where possible, developers that are building at 10,000 US dollars a house, between 5 million naira a house to, of course, maybe 30, 40 million naira, etc. Because at the end of the day, we believe in developers that want to make money through economies of scale. Not to make money on one big house, but over a large amount of houses, like 1,000 units or so. So we are very excited because we expect to launch this bond no later than March, between February and March of 2022. So we've only got about a month.
Exactly.
Yes, and I've just been, I think the whole of January, whilst people were just getting in, we were actually having investor roadshows with all the pension funds, all the interested parties. And I'm meeting some more, during my stay here in beautiful city of Lagos. And I believe it will be successful because there is a moral obligation for us to make a difference. You see, why is Nigeria unique? Is because not only is it the most populous nation, of course, in the whole of Africa, we as Shelter Afrique want to make a strategic, deliberate, intervention to support to the extent we can in driving that shortage of housing or deficit downwards through a meaningful contribution. So yes, I think we're very, very committed to it. 200 million people and growing. By 2050, our Center of Excellence estimates the population to be double at 400 million. So if you look at how the population is spread, 50% is in the urban areas, which makes it 100 million people. Now, if 50% are in the urban areas and there's still more urbanization, that is people coming from the rural to the urban, I think it's about 6% movement every year, etc. If you don't intervene, what will happen is there will be a proliferation of slums because there will be more people but inadequate housing. 100%, yes. So we really believe that there is a greater and dire need That's why we are here to make that difference.
Hey, we wish you the best of luck. We'll have you back, I guess. So hopefully the bond is oversubscribed. Andrew Chimphondah, who is the GMD, CEO of Shelter Afrique, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Reuters, and to your viewers and listeners, thank you for listening to us. Fantastic. And we wish you a blessed day, sir.
All right.